Welcome to the first in a series of Hub Framework sessions. This first episode is about the content loading chain and how you can chain content operations together to build the content of your view. Now in the Hub framework, you use what is called content operations to declaratively create your view models. Those view models will then be used to render view controllers in your app using components. But what's cool about content operations is that just like other operations, they can be chained together to form a content loading chain. What this means is that you can create atomic operations that each create a piece of the view that you want to render, so you don't have to have this huge code that does all of your rendering logic. Now, how the content loading chain works is that when you give us an array of multiple operations, we're going to perform them sequentially whenever the content for a view is going to be loaded. That means that you don't have to worry about merging content from different sources because these operations will never be performed in parallel. They can all rely on the previous state instead of having to do a lot of complicated logic for that. And the way this is managed through the framework is through the use of a view model builder. The view model builder is going to be the input for each operation when it's performed, and the operation can then use this builder to add content or modify content in the view. Now what's great about this is that the same view model builder will actually be passed to all the operations, but in between each operation we will perform a copy of it. That will guarantee that operations don't accidentally start to share states, because once an operation is finished, it can no longer add content to the view model builder. So we're going to do the same thing for each operation. We're going to, in between, copy it and then pass it in to each operation. And then that operation can do whatever work it needs to do. For example, call a backend service, download some JSON and add it to the builder, or do work completely in code locally in the app. Once all the operations have finished, that's when we go ahead and build a view model from the builder and render that view model. Alright, so I wanted to show you two examples of how this can be quite powerful and how you can use it in practice. So for the first example, how does this work if we just want to append components to a view? Well, let's say we have a content operation A, which does two simple things. The first thing it does is that it adds a component with the ID row0. So it's just a simple component with an ID. And then it sets the title of that component to hello. So very, very simple. That will result in a component which has the ID row0 and the title hello. Then you have a content operation B, which comes next in the chain. What it does is that it adds a second component, this one with ID row1, and it sets the title of that component to hello again, which will result in a component with the ID row1 and the title hello again. Now, once both of these operations have finished, we're going to go ahead and render what they produced. And the result of both of them is simply going to be two components, one that has the ID row0 and the title hello, and the other one which has the row1 ID and the title hello again. So your view is going to look like this. So that's a very simple use case where different operations can add different components, and the result is just going to be composed and rendered as one. So you don't have to worry about the aggregation of all this data. The framework is actually going to take care of that. So one other example is how we can use the content loading chain to actually modify components. So again, let's say we have a content operation A, which does exactly what it did in the previous example. It creates a component with the ID row0 that has the title hello. But now operation B, instead of actually creating a new component with a unique ID, it's going to attempt to create a component with the same ID. Now what that is going to do, it's actually going to give this content operation an instance of the previously created component model. What that means is that if we set the title of that model to hello again, it's not going to generate a new component, it's actually just going to update the title of the previously created row0 component. Now, this is quite powerful because this enables you to inject logic that just modifies existing components without having to create new ones. So the end result here is going to be that we just have one component with an ID row 0 and the title hello again, because we updated it in content operation B. Now in practice, what we can do with this is, for example, in the Spotify app, if we wanted to add a local notification to the home view, we could do that using content operation chaining. So let's take a look. This is the home view of the Spotify app, which gives you a bunch of carousels with different recommendations. Now this view is completely backend driven, so it has a content operation that loads JSON data from the backend and populates the view using that JSON data. But if we wanted to add a local notification, we couldn't get that information from the backend. So what we'd do is we'd add a second content operation. We call it operation B in this case, which just adds a local notification at the top of the view. And the end result would be that we now can display a notification at the top of the rest of the content without having to make any changes to the previous content operation. That code can be left completely intact. So how does this look in code? Well, let's move over and take a look at each of these operations. The first one, which loads the backend data and just adds it to the builder, it just does so using a simple one-line API call on the view model builder that's just add JSON data, and it passes the NS data that it downloaded from the backend. Content operation B, what it does the things that it needs to do completely native in code. So what it will do is it will create a component builder from the view model builder with a unique identifier. In this case, we use the identifier notification. It's then going to set the component name on that builder so that the framework knows that we want to render this component model using the notification components. It's then going to set the title of that component model, so we get the title that we want to display in the UI. And here's an important row where we actually set the preferred index of this model. All the component models that get added to a view, they always get appended at the end, but by using preferred index, you can actually move them around. So in this case, we tell the framework that we want this notification component to be rendered at the top of the view. So that's how you can use content operations to perform chaining, just like you see here on this picture. But another interesting aspect of the chain is how it works when it comes to rescheduling your content operations. So all the content operations, they have a delegate which is implemented by the framework. And this delegate is maintaining a content operation queue which it uses to schedule different content operations and make sure that they get performed in sequence. Now, when you go ahead and reschedule an operation, let's say we reschedule operation B in this case, what's going to happen is that we're going to put operation B into the content operation queue so that whenever the queue is idle, we will perform this operation. But what's cool here is that we're not only going to reschedule operation B, we're automatically also going to reschedule operation C. And this is important because it allows B and C to have this nice relationship where C is always guaranteed to be executed after B. So if C does some kind of post-processing, like for example in our previous example where we added a notification on top, we always know that we'll be able to add this notification. It won't accidentally disappear in case the previous operation gets rescheduled. And then we won't waste a lot of CPU cycles on rendering in case we don't need to. So we're going to just build and render whenever the operation queue becomes empty. So if you reschedule a lot of operations, that's not a problem because we're just going to wait until the chain or the queue in this case is empty, and that's when we're going to go ahead and build and render. So this was a quick introduction to the content loading chain and how you can use content operations to easily chain together series of logic to build the content of your view. For more information, take a look at the content programming guide on our documentation portal in the Hub Framework repo, where you can read more about how content operations work, what they're supposed to do, and how you can build your own. Thanks a lot for watching.